Hi. All right, today we're going to go over JWT validation in the API security for the HTTP load balancer in distributed cloud. This feature was added in December, so about a month ago. And I'm going to show you where that is right now so you can actually see what those pieces look like. And let's say Chrome and then jump over here. So this feature was added under the validate authenticity, integrity, expiry of JWT pieces. So you can see some stuff in here. I wanted to turn this on because I've done this feature inside Big IP, which is a little bit more, let's say, stepwise, something to get a handle on. But if I can push that authorization validation farther up, right, I think that's a big benefit for just general security practice. So let's start with what it looks like in code, and then I can show you what that looks like in the UI. And then from there, we'll do a test. So this is configuration. It is distributed cloud. So in the lab, distributed cloud, Terraform, configuration, and then all of my load balancers live right here. They all do various different things. They send to different targets. The one I created for this was the JWT one. There's a reason for that. You can only have one API security profile attached to a load balancer at a time. So if you're going to do something like this, you're going to need a load balancer that probably just has the API endpoint in it, and then you can attach that API security profile to it. So imagine it's www.john.com, but for the API, it would be API or jwt.john.com, right? Or calalang.net. So down in here, I only need to add this one block in order to turn this feature on. The first part is the target. You can do all endpoints. You can do a discovered group of APIs. So if you've documented your API with like the Swagger import, or if you've done the discovery, you can group those and then you could do it on that. And then the third option is to do it on a base path. So maybe I'm implementing version 2 of my API and I only want to do the JWT validation on / version 2 instead of version 1. Well, then I can also pick that too. So that's my target. The location is a bearer token, right? That's the authorization bearer. The action to me is flipped. It seems like this would be block false or allow if I have a valid config, but in this case it's block true unless I have a valid config. I store my jock as a Terraform variable, so that way I'm not storing it in code. But you do need to send it in to distributed cloud if you're doing it programmatically, base 64 encoded. So this is a base 64 encoded jock configuration. There's only 3 reserved claims, and that's enough to get you some kind of validation. The reserved claims are issuer, which is what I'm using. So it's got to match the domain that is my variable, right? I don't have the audience turned on. If I did have audience, that's the AUD flag inside the JWT. The issuer is the ISS. And then there's also the validate period, and that would be the epoch time, like how long is this token valid for? So this is what it looks like in code and where it lives inside distributed cloud. To break this out so it makes a little bit more sense for the UI user, we're going to go back to that JWT one. We'll say manage config, and then I can go down here into API protection, and I don't have the definition turned on, right? So I can't do the groups. And I don't have API discovery turned on, so I can't dynamically create the groups. But I do have the validation turned on. So you don't need all 3. You can use independent pieces of the API protection. Inside here, you can see all that stuff I talked about just a second ago. My exact match, because Terraform stamps it in, right? That's my domain. I don't have any of these other things set. But if I wanted to, I could change those in here, see what they would look like, and then reinforce those in Terraform. Under the JSON web key sets, you may have more than one key. It does need to be JSON formatted, so we'll break this out. You can see that mine's specified as a signature. I'm not using an ecliptic curve. Also the type, right, and the algorithm, and then here's that issuer that has to match. So if I turn this on, which is on for jwt.calalang.net, then anytime somebody hits that website, right, the HTTP load balancer, it's going to try to do that validation. So in my case, I'm going to refresh this a few times. There's the JWT piece. It's going to kick out a bunch of support ID codes because it's not valid, right? I'm unauthorized. If I see that inside here, so we'll discard these changes, and then we'll go over and switch to the web and API security tab. Now in here, come on, load. Oh, dashboards. So security dashboards. So under the security dashboard, now for this particular load balancer, and we'll say the JWT one, we'll filter that out, and you'll see a bunch of these API requests. And that's basically me failing authorization. So authorization's failing, it's an API security event. It's not a WAF or a bot defense or a service policy. Now I can start to drill into that a little bit more and more. So I'm gonna go click on that load balancer. It's telling me that I've got a pretty high threat because I'm unauthorized. Now I can go into the security analytics, right? And I can dig in deeper to each one of those requests. Now, each one of these requests, as we can see, there's a bunch of 401s, right? And those 401s, let's jump over to the JSON side. Those 401s are because JSON validation failure. Now, I could either filter on this and just look for everything like that, or I could do the query from my SEM or Prometheus or something that's going to go grab this, or I could push it out via the fire hose style analytics to something else. But I'd be searching on that, and that gives me a really good idea of what's broken. So these are all the security events, but I want to see what it looks like when it's working. So here's a bunch of broken ones. We'll say refresh right now. And then I'm going to go to that page again. I've got a coworker of mine, his name's Chef, and he gave me this great plugin that I'd never used before, but mod header. In mod header, what I'm going to do is I'm going to inject the request header for authorization bearer, and then I'm throwing that token in there that's valid. So I'm going to go ahead and start it. And then once I start it and I hit the refresh button, the page loads. Right now, obviously, you would not be implementing a browser plugin to browse websites with JWTs, but it's a good way for you to see it inside a browser. Typically, this would be a header injected inside an API client. But now if I refresh a few times, you can see that header's injected and I'm getting a bunch of request IDs and it's working just fine. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn that back off. So pause it, and then you'll see that it breaks. So now that JWT's being validated, and you can see right on the HTTP load balancer. So I'm going to refresh now, and what you'll see is some graphs change, right? So there's, let's see, refresh a few more times. So there's some blocks, there's some green ones coming through. The feature was added in December. I think it's a great feature to implement some security as close as possible, right, to the edge. And again, the HTTP load balancers are distributed across the globe, so it gives you really good security kind of at that local region. I'm gonna switch back over. Clean. Here I am. So code exists in a certain spot. The three different kinds of validations that you can do against it. You do need to pick one of the three. It doesn't need to be all three of them. It could be two, it could be one. I chose just the issuer, but you could choose all three if you wanted. If you have any questions on this, please open up an issue again for this, or if you have any recommendations on new videos. I have some stuff in the works for next week and the week after at this point, but I'm always welcome to ideas that maybe come up, and you guys need me to look at it. So as always, I wish everybody good luck. Have a great week and a great start to the new year.